Today's podcast is brought to you by Jerry Robinson's Market Barometer, a powerful tool for investors who want to avoid the next major market downturn. Learn more at marketbarometer.org.
Friends, welcome to Follow the Money Daily, a daily podcast dedicated to your personal, spiritual, and financial freedom. My name is Jerry Robinson, your host, publisher here at FTMDaily.com, also an economist and an author of the book Bankruptcy of Our Nation. I'm joined by my wife and national director of our Christian Financial Advisor Network, Jennifer. Great to have you this morning.
Thanks, Jerry. Is it just me, or do we have a lot of people who love this daily podcast? We've just been getting comment after comment.
We love the comments. Okay, we'll be honest and tell you that we really do. We really appreciate seeing all the feedback because, you know, we've been working hard at this for years. I mean, this is something we've been doing for a long time. And in 2010, we launched FTMDaily.com with the hope to educate, equip, and empower individuals just like you to become a better investor, to learn how to create multiple streams of income, how to protect yourself from a breakdown of the overall economy, and to become even, not just a better investor, but also a better trader. You know, many of you who are just tuning in now, you may be thinking, who's this Johnny come lately? You know, I mean, I think it's odd because, you know, when you look around, you see all these guys talking about different things. And so I don't blame you if you're brand new to our show and you think, you know, you have no idea who we are. I'm grateful that you're here. I'm very glad that you're here. And I hope you keep tuning in because you'll find that what we're committed to here at Follow the Money is consistent value. We want to drive value into your life. We want to create value for you so that you continue to learn and expand your knowledge and then apply that knowledge. I think that's one of the biggest things about our company is that we focus on not just teaching you how to do things, but actually how to then implement them. And so when we're talking about the collapse of the dollar like we did yesterday, we're going to continue today, but we're always trying to find application for it. So, you know, hopefully at the end of this program, you're going to walk away not just with knowledge, but also with some sort of call to action. You know,
yeah, and that's why we put in our book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, not only about how the nation is bankrupt and all of the economic and financial problems facing our nation and the world for that matter, but the second half of the book is filled with all kinds of solutions straight from our 5 levels of financial freedom. And if you haven't picked up a copy of that book, by the way, and you are new to the show and you want to learn more about who we are and about our philosophies, pick up a copy, Bankruptcy of Our Nation, by, of course, your host, Jerry Robinson. And you can find that on Amazon, from our website, ftmdaily.com, or from your local bookstore as well.
Yeah, it's at Barnes & Noble and places like that. It came out originally in 2008, right after the economic crisis. I mean, just perfect timing. And then we had the new book come out in 2012. It was a revised and updated edition. But you can also get a copy of the audiobook if you like this podcast. I'm sure you'd like the audiobook of that book as well. You can find that on audible.com. Okay, so look, today I want to talk about the dollar. But one of the things that you have to talk about when you talk about the dollar are things that are not related to the dollar. You know, what do I mean by that? Well, right now there's a story on the front page of Drudge. It's from the Washington Free Beacon. It says Russian bombers fly within 50 miles of California coast. U.S. F-22, F-15 jets intercept 4 Bear H bombers near Alaska and Northern California. So these are strategic bombers that are coming in from Russia, and they're just, you know, within just a few minutes off of the coast of California. And lo and behold, how does this story end up in the news as a major headline the day after the United States sends nuclear B-52 bombers across the pond over to Europe, armed with nuclear bombs, okay, heading over to Europe so they can be nearby Russia, for all of this stuff. And then lo and behold, what do you have the day before that? But you have Russian companies saying how they're going to drop the U.S. dollar. They're going to begin using rubles and also renminbi in overall trade. And so what you have here is this is a currency war. This is what you're saying. This is a currency war unfolding. We had Jim Rickards on the program, several months ago, whenever his book came out on the currency war. And, this is something we've been following for a long time. We talk about it in our petrodollar article series. We talk about it in our book, Bankruptcy of Our Nation. So these are the kinds of things. When you wake up and see Russian bombers fly within 50 miles of California coast, the very first thing that should come into your mind is that this is part of a broader currency war. This is really what this is about. Now, there was another currency war that took place back in 2003, and it came underneath the guise of delivering freedom and democracy to Iraq. Remember that? Freedom and democracy. That's what the Iraqi people want. They just can't wait to get some freedom and democracy, right? And so we sent our troops over, and now take a look at what's happening in Iraq. Anarchy across the country. Mosul and Tikrit taken by al-Qaeda forces. The very same thing that we were hoping to avoid, right, is happening now. And, I say hoping to avoid, you can't make too many assumptions about these guys in Washington. What were they really trying to avoid? What were they trying to do? Well, we know that the first action of the U.S. military, once they hit the ground in Iraq and made their way towards Baghdad, was to shift this petro-euro system that Saddam Hussein had set up, where he was selling all of his barrels of oil for euros, and instead they switched it back to dollars. And so now all the oil coming out of Iraq is being priced in dollars, and that occurred way back in 2003. That switch came quickly. So we know that they certainly wanted that. But what about the rest of Iraq? I mean, once they had that done, what was the whole purpose of going over there? What was that? I mean, because when you look at it now, you see the country is in absolute total turmoil. And people will say that it was a good thing that we ousted Saddam Hussein. But in many ways, wasn't Saddam Hussein the strong man in Iraq? Wasn't he preventing all of this from happening? Wasn't he keeping his foot on the heads of these guys from getting out of control, these rebels? Now you have mass beheadings by al-Qaeda forces in these cities that they've taken over. Medieval Sharia law, it says here, imposed upon millions. The prime minister of Iraq is asking the U.S. to intervene and launch airstrikes. I don't think the U.S. wants to go back to Iraq. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think I would be. I definitely wouldn't be for sending troops back to Iraq. I mean, I personally would not, but I'm sure the country isn't either.
Well, but when you think about it, Jerry, if our mission really was to bring them freedom and democracy, then why wouldn't we go back and finish our mission? So, but like you said, I don't believe that Washington will send the troops back. Nobody wants that in this country. And we're getting weary of Afghanistan. So many mistakes are happening there. But if our plan really was freedom and democracy, well, this is the time that they really need us.
That is exactly true. And just take a look at what's happening right now between Turkey and Iran. The presidents of those two countries have recently met. They met in the capital of Turkey, and they signed deals on energy and trade. This is the first time they've been together in 18 years. And one of the primary reasons that they got together, according to all the stories that came out, was because they were concerned about what was happening in Syria and in Iraq, basically their neighborhood. And this is an area that for a long time was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, going back through history. It's an area now that many of the extremist Muslims want to return to a caliphate. They want to restore the old caliphate system, in essence, where everybody in that area pays allegiance to Islam. And they don't just want it there, they want to take it worldwide. I mean, this is no doubt about it. This has been going on for some time. But when we see what's happening in Iraq and we see how fragmented that country has become, and we see how the Islamists are now not just taking over some of these periphery cities, but they're actually moving in towards Baghdad itself. it makes you realize that there's a strong man needed in this area, and that's what Saddam Hussein in many ways did. And the U.S. got rid of him, came in and brought their force, and then they left this huge vacuum. These U.S. Trained police forces in Iraq are apparently not doing a very good job. They're getting run out of their cities, and of course the people living over in Iraq. My gosh, I mean, there's people over there just like you and me who desperately want peace. They desperately want to feel secure. They want to have normal lives. And the anarchy just continues to spiral out of control. And Washington seems completely helpless. What are they going to do? And I guarantee the American people are not interested in going back to war. They're just not interested in going back to war. They're exhausted. They just want out of Afghanistan. They want out of Iraq. And so, and then, of course, Iraq is certainly a major former currency war, war theater. Now Russia has kind of picked up the mantle, and now the United States and Russia are duking it out with Russian bombers again flying within 50 miles of the California coast. And, of course, as I mentioned before, Iran and Turkey wanting to do something in that region over there. And of course, they're tied, especially Iran is tied with Russia. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. And so as somebody who is a United States citizen, or someone who is an investor, or someone who is watching these events and is trying to make sense of them, you have to really read between the lines when you see these stories that come out. There was another story, too, that I just have to talk about before I talk a little bit more about the dollar, and that is the solar flares. I don't know if you saw these, but solar flares, let's see, how many of them were there? There were 3 major solar flares on the surface of the sun just the last 2 days, and they have already affected communications on Earth. There's talk now of brief blackouts potentially coming on Friday the 13th. I guess that's when they're expecting some problems. They've already had problems earlier this week. But these solar flares, we've done stories on this as well. We had Matt Stein on, who wrote the book When Technology Fails. And he's an MIT-trained engineer, the whole 9 yards, came on and explained how, it's just a matter of time before we have another major solar flare that could set us way back. And you see these stories like this, and I tell you, I think the American people are woefully underprepared. Many of them, according to the statistics we see, they don't have any savings. They're not ready for retirement. Most of them are not ready for any kind of disaster in their city. They're just woefully underprepared across the board. Now, of course, Jennifer and I, we were living in Houston, Texas, a massive, sprawling metropolitan area, 4 million, 5 million people. I don't know, maybe even higher than that. It was enormous. And it was something that we just knew we had to get away from. We'd moved into the middle of nowhere, northwest Arkansas. Some of you have heard that story. And of course, now we're ready. I mean, we have the generator. We have the things that we need. We have the garden. We have all the things that, we're building all that out right now. But you don't have to do that to be prepared. We've shown many different things on our website, our YouTube channel, in these previous podcasts, things that you can do to prepare right where you are. You don't have to move out to the country. You don't have to do all the crazy things we've done. You can just do something very simple, and create a go bag and put it in your car. Create a go bag, keep it in your house. You can, create water storage and food storage. And these things all, again, they may sound alarmist, but I tell you what, worst case scenario, if you have some food storage and you don't need it, you can always give it away to somebody. Give it away to your church. But the way that Jennifer and I teach, we don't teach storing up all kinds of food you're never going to eat. We just store up food that we are going to eat, and we just buy more of it. So it really works out well for us. So anyway, we have a lot of shows on that, a lot of articles on our website. You can go and check that out. I don't want to spend this whole show on preparedness, but when we see the things that are happening like we are right now, currency war breaking out, definitely have Russia, flying within 50 miles of the California coast. You have solar flares that are occurring. This is just a difficult time. And it's a serious time. It's a call for sobriety. It's a time for people to be vigilant and watching closely what's happening.
Yeah, and Jerry, one of the things that we really talk about for people to be watching are these events unfolding, revolving around the decline of the dollar, the collapse of the dollar. And of course, we talked about this yesterday on the podcast. We're going to continue on this topic. I know yesterday you made a final statement on the podcast about when the dollar will collapse.
Oh, yeah. You know, I got a couple of people who caught it, good ears, and I want to thank those people who called it out to my attention. Yeah, Alice made the comment, and also YouTube user Lawchendi made the comment, you know, when global demand exceeds supply is what I said, and that was actually wrong. What I was trying to say about when the dollar will collapse is when the global supply of dollars exceeds the global demand for those dollars. That's whenever we run into a major problem. So when global supply of dollars like we have now, this excessive amount, of course, through QE1 and QE2 and QE3, we've had all of this excessive amount of dollars created. And then all of these countries around the world hold these dollars. Now, they hold them for a variety of reasons. They hold them for oil purchases because of this petrodollar system. They hold it for purchases directly from us for trade. But they also trade within the U.S. dollar between themselves, especially smaller countries who don't trust each other and they don't trust each other's currencies and each other's monetary regimes. They'll just opt to use the dollar for trade between them. And so there's this large amount of implicit demand for dollars that eventually will not be at the current level that's it's at now. And the reason that we know that is because no currency remains the global reserve currency forever. We go throughout history and we see that global reserve currencies, they rise and then they fall. And that's exactly what we see here in the case of the United States dollar, where there is a lot of demand for the dollar today, but you see people like Russia and Iran and others, China even, who are making the move to get more demand for their currency. You cannot increase the demand for the yuan without decreasing the supply for another currency, right? Because that's just how it works. And so, in essence, right now, the use of the dollar is being chipped away at. You know, countries may hold the dollar, but they may not use the dollar. And that's the key. Holding it is a good thing. It's a good thing for us because it keeps it out of our markets. It keeps it out of our system. But once they stop holding that dollar, and this has been talked about before in the past, and they start sending those dollars back to the United States because they don't need to hold them, they'd rather have gold or they'd rather have some other currency, then those dollars have to find a resting place. They have to go somewhere. And of course, as we talked about yesterday, they always come back to the point of origin, which would be the Federal Reserve. And so, right here in the United States. So they would come back here, and what Russia is doing right now is it is trying to blunt or slow down the use of the dollar within Russia itself. They're not sending all their dollars back to the United States. They're just trying to slow down the use of it. And if you can slow down the use of it, then you don't need to hold as many in your reserve.
Yeah, and Jerry, there are a lot of obstacles for these other countries to make the switch. I mean, imagine just the simple task of, I say simple, but just switching banks. You know, when you have maybe 2, 3, 4 accounts at a certain bank and then you have to switch to a different bank, well, you have to switch all of your direct deposits and all of your auto debits. And, you know, it's kind of a hassle when you make a financial switch. And so imagine these countries like Russia, China, who are wanting to switch away from using the dollar as much. They do face some hurdles. So, you know, we don't think this is happening overnight or anything, but because there are lots of hurdles and costs when you make a switch like this. But each and every time there's a story like this that comes out about Russia or any of these other countries switching away.
It's another nail in the coffin. That's what it is. It's really what it is. It's just another nail in the coffin showing you that the direction of this trend continues. The strength of this trend remains. We are moving to a time where some countries are going to stop using the U.S. dollar for some things. Okay? Now, that's not going to create a complete dollar collapse. That's not in and of itself. But it's going to erode the value of the dollar, and it's going to send many of those excess dollars that are out there floating around back here, causing inflation to go higher. And inflation, by the way, you hear a lot about inflation and about how it's going to get, very, very high in the future. But when you take a look at what's happening today, you see inflation is currently happening. And anybody who shops, anybody who fills up their tank of gas, anyone who, uses energy of any sort has certainly seen inflation.
Anyone who attends college has definitely seen, or gets health care. I mean, these prices are skyrocketing.
Yeah, but I mean, you listen to Washington, and they put out their figures, and their figures obviously they're biased. But, inflation's definitely rising. I mean, you can take a look at, anything that you normally buy, and you'll see that it's rising in price. So inflation's obviously here. Look at the stock market. The stock market's rising. And what do you think it is? I mean, do you really think it's all of these massive profits that these companies are pulling in? I mean, the last earnings season wasn't that great. I mean, it's okay, but the general price level rise within the stock market is very, very much an indicator of the inflation. It's very much having to do with all of the excess money that was pumped in by the Federal Reserve and how the Fed continues to pump money in. So, this whole idea that that inflation is not going to happen because the Fed somehow is going to control it, yeah, well, you just bet on that, right? If that's what you think, you just go ahead and keep all your money in dollars and you keep all your money in the stock market, and you're going to see what's going to happen to that whole system. This Fed is a fraud. It's an absolute fraud, and it's been a fraud since it first began in 1913, whenever Woodrow Wilson signed it into law. And it's just the first of three. In fact, we actually have a brand new report we put out. It's a couple weeks old, but it is all about the Federal Reserve. If you have not downloaded this free report we did on the Federal Reserve, I encourage you to go check it out. What's the website for that, Jennifer?
They can go to ftmdaily.com/Fed.
Yeah, real simple. ftmdaily.com/Fed, and it's called The Hidden History of the Federal Reserve. If you haven't downloaded that free report, it's a pretty lengthy full-color report, but it'll give you a lot of background, not just on the Federal Reserve, but on the two previous central banks that came before the Federal Reserve. And so it'll give you a lot of information on that whole thing for those of you who want to know more about the Fed. But yeah, the Fed is just, it's an absolute fraud, and they continue to make things up as they go. This dollar, they continue to destroy. Our currency, they are not protecting. And we pay interest to the Fed on money they create, which the Constitution doesn't even give them the express permission to print currency. It tells you in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution that only the Congress has the express permission to coin money and regulate the value thereof. But you can't print money. That's not what the Constitution says. Now, of course, 1913, the Federal Reserve Act, they say, well, the Federal Reserve now is in power, so they can print money if they want to, and they can do this, and they can do that. But you know what? The Federal Reserve violates the Constitution in and of itself. So I'm no fan, obviously, of the Federal Reserve. I think that they are a leech upon our economy. So you can, again, download that free report on our website, ftmdaily.com/Fed. Download that for free, read the report, pass it around to friends and family, have them get a copy of it. Just get it out there. It's just good education. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to spend some more time talking about, in particular, the petrodollar system. I want to talk about that. In particular, I want to talk about how Saudi Arabia really plays the linchpin role in keeping that petrodollar system in place. It was the originator. It was the original nation that set up the system with Henry Kissinger and President Nixon. And throughout time, it has been the champion of the petrodollar system. But we believe that coming soon, we're going to see that even break down. And there's a variety of reasons why, and I'll talk about some of them tomorrow for sure on tomorrow's podcast. Jennifer, where are the markets at right now?
Well, the S&P 500 is sitting at 1937, down a bit from yesterday.
Yeah, that is down. For those of you who are watching these markets, the S&P 500 is the one we watch. I mean, I know some people look at the Dow, but that's only 30 stocks. The NASDAQ is good also, but it's really tech heavy. So the S&P 500 gives you, I believe, a really nice broad view of the U.S. market. And that's what most hedge funds and most international investors look at when they look at the U.S. market. They look at either the Wilshire 5000, which has become less relevant, or the S&P 500. And so we believe that tracking that S&P 500 is very important. We know the Fed is certainly targeting the S&P 500 with its policy. So right now it's at 1937. It came up to that 1950 area, got up to 1955, and then started backtracking. So we're keeping our eyes very close on this. Those of you who have our Market Barometer service, it's the cheapest form of insurance you can buy for $5 a month. As soon as that trend changes, we're going to alert you by a real-time email. And you can learn more about that at marketbarometer.org. What about gold and silver?
Gold and silver are both up slightly today. Gold is at $12.71. Silver at $19.45.
Okay, so they're rising nicely today. That sounds really good. Sounds like silver's up about maybe, 2% or maybe 1%?
A little more, about 1.25%.
Yeah, that's really good. And then gold also nice. That's nice because gold was down to $12.16, just yesterday, wasn't it? Or maybe the day before.
Yeah, so $12.71 and $19.45 for those who are gold and silver investors. If you haven't ever looked into buying any gold and silver, you can get a wealth of information on our webpage, ftmdaily.com/gold. We even have a free gold and silver investors kit there. And so you can check out all of our free resources, videos, audios
webinars.
On ftmdaily.com /gold.
We did some great webinars with Tom Cloud over the years, and we placed them all up there. If you really want to learn from a nearly 40-year veteran of the gold, precious metals industry, you really ought to go to that website, ftmdaily.com /gold, and just listen to the wealth of knowledge that Tom Cloud shares every single week right there. You can sign up for that free email as well while you're there. You get updates on gold and silver investing. All right, friends. Well, you know what? That brings us to the end of another program, a daily program. If you like what we're doing, would you send us an email? We've already had several of you comment, but I'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at info@ftmdaily.com or call us 800-609-5530. We want to hear from you. We want to know that you're listening, and we want to know that you want us to continue this daily podcast. So let us know, drop us a line, or give us a call. And until next time, my friends, I leave you with this final word spoken by Robert Frost when he said, "The best way out is always through." Just something to think about. Remember, friends, when you want the truth about the global economy, just follow the money. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. God bless.
All of the information contained on Follow the Money is strictly for informational and educational purposes. The views and opinions of our guests and sponsors, including Tom Cloud and Jay Peroni, are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of FTMDaily.com or Robinson Media Group, LLC. Jerry and Jennifer Robinson do hold their insurance licenses and may offer consulting on life insurance and fixed retirement income products. Jennifer Robinson is an investment advisor representative with Faith-Based Investor, LLC. Remember, never do your financial planning through podcast or radio. It's your money. Be wise. Do your due diligence and always consult a trusted financial professional before making any financial decisions.